What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 7th episode of the Jiu Jitsu Junction podcast. And the central topic today is how wrestlers should be transitioning into learning Jiu Jitsu. So this is Andre, and I have my friend Cary Miller here. And he is a D1 wrestler, App State, right? I'm sure he has accolades. I don't actually know them.
Yeah. Who cares?
Who cares? Anyway, so we train at an MMA gym, and we have a lot of wrestlers come through, and how well they do in actual jiu-jitsu varies a lot based on who the person is. So do you have any opening statements in regard to how wrestlers should be transitioning into becoming good at the jiu-jitsu part of things?
And I mean, like you just said, it really depends on like the type of person you're getting. Obviously, anyone with a student mindset is obviously, that's the best.
It's easier to teach.
Easier.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the one thing that you will sometimes get with wrestlers is they'll really hang on to those egos.
Yeah,
really have a death grip on them. So you kind of have to break that. And I've talked to a lot of wrestlers. Some wrestlers legitimately think jiu-jitsu doesn't work. I've personally seen this, like high level wrestlers come to and they're like, well, that wouldn't work on me. And then I've seen Chase just absolutely, put the works on them. Yeah. And then there's this like big eye-opening moment afterwards. They're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they get the wrong hobbyist and they could work them up.
Yeah, I think that hurts them even more when it's someone like they know like does this but like doesn't do it like as a job. Like they just do it. You get snatched up by someone who just does it for fun.
Some chubby guy walking in. You just came from a sport with weight classes. Everybody's like super in shape, right? And then you get some like chubby Joe Schmo who just tools you, right? So it's a huge ego check, right?
My first week doing jiu-jitsu, real no-gi jiu-jitsu, and I'm 245. This was just like midst COVID. I'd been doing nothing but lifting. I'm more jacked than I'd ever been, and this like skinny, unassuming, glasses wearing accountant Matt Norman is the jiu-jitsu teacher, and he asked me to roll, and I was like, okay, I'll try not to hurt you. And man, I think I made it like a minute or something before he guillotined me. And I was like, what? Oh, I was so mad. And then I tried even harder and it didn't matter.
Yeah. You give them all the energy they need to tool you worse, right? So there's definitely something different about walking into jiu-jitsu with a background in wrestling, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like a lot of the times wrestlers join because they want to continue their competitive, like they've just spent a long time being competitive, doing tournaments, and they're like, well, what do I do now? Because after college, unless you are the very, very top of the sport, it's kind of over, right?
Yeah, and man, there's even if you were like top of the sport, you make some money, but really below that, you could still do it. But man, like you can maybe make like 20 grand a month.
Yeah.
Or excuse me.
Like 20 grand a month.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
20 grand a year.
Yeah.
So for sure, just trying to continue, just something to do, something to learn.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you think are the biggest differences that a wrestler walking into jiu-jitsu for the first time is going to have compared to like, somebody who's walking in without a background in wrestling?
Oh, that's a good one. I think the biggest thing is a wrestler is going to have no problem being mean and aggressive and physical.
Yeah.
Probably top to bottom.
That's part of the sport.
Yeah. And I think most people, when they first come in, I mean, obviously not everybody, but most people, I think they're like, hey, am I going too hard? Am I, yeah. And I'm like, well, I promise you're not going to hurt me.
Yeah.
But that's always on their mind. And you know, we're all taught to be very polite and whatnot. And a wrestler just usually knows, like, this guy could probably handle, or either that or they don't care whether they can.
Yeah. You like not all wrestlers.
Probably they don't care.
Not all wrestlers don't care for sure. But it's just part of how wrestlers grapple. It's just, okay, if I have an advantage, if I do something mean, I'm going to take it every time, right?
Yeah.
It's a mindset thing, right? So they take it every time. And they walk in, and almost every wrestler I've seen walks in shape.
At least somewhat, yeah.
Like they never lose the ability to push the pace.
Well, and I think also, and we've talked about this a lot, and I've talked about a lot, some wrestlers really think that's all there is. Is just the hard, is just the pace, just always trying to. So they really, and I've seen a lot of them really work, like they're like panicked about losing that. They condition all the time. They are always trying to push. They think any way other than that is wrong.
Right. Yeah, that you could definitely feel it, right? And I feel like that's part of the reason why when wrestlers join jiu-jitsu, they get either ignored or negative treatment, right? Right, ignored or negative treatment.
A lot of negative reviews.
Yeah. So and it's not really necessarily their fault, because they didn't learn how to do it a different way.
Yeah.
And it takes a different amount of time based on what kind of person the wrestler is to acclimate to the pacing of jiu-jitsu, which is very different.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying wrestling isn't complex, but there are more situations, like in terms of number of situations, that you might find for jiu-jitsu.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, just wrestling has so many more rules.
That makes sense.
So jiu-jitsu, you have so much. I mean, people talk about jiu-jitsu being freedom all the time. You just have so much freedom to do stuff. In wrestling, there's lots of things, but you're constricted by time limits. There's only a few rule sets for wrestling. There's like a billion different rule sets and competition sets for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, for sure. And the types of rules are very, like, they're so minuscule.
Yeah.
Like you
don't
can't,
poke people in the eye.
Don't poke people in the eyes. Like, don't like, what is the reaping?
Yeah.
You know.
And even that's, like, some places they're like,
sometimes it's okay, sometimes it isn't.
I did a jiu-jitsu competition over the weekend, and I had some brown belt. But anyway, they were explaining the rules in the meeting, and the guy was like, obviously you can't slam. Well, you can slam. We won't. There were super fights, so you won't get disqualified. But please don't slam. So I was like, okay, so you can basically do whatever you want.
Yeah, for sure, right. So I mean, there's so many advantages that you get from wrestling, right? You've got untold amount of repetitions doing grappling, right? You're talking about some movements, you've got 10,000 repetitions, especially if you make it to, like, even if you do all the years of only high school wrestling.
Oh, for sure.
And then you go even further, and if you've done college wrestling, that's just so many thousands of hours of mat time and at least hundreds of hours of competition time. So that's a lot of stress inoculation. That's a lot of stress. And that's a big part of what holds back hobbyist white belts that don't come in with that rich grappling experience, right? So we have those advantages, and there's physical advantages. There's, stress advantages that I just mentioned. But what are the things that hold back wrestlers from getting good at jiu-jitsu?
Man, I think the biggest thing is, as much as wrestlers do love to push it, a lot of times they don't want to push it to out. They want to push it in a way they're used to, but it's different getting out of your comfort zone. Like, I know for the first few weeks I was doing jiu-jitsu, I was never trying to be on my back.
Yeah.
Ever. ever. And I actually got banned from neutral for a while. I remember it was a Friday, and I was, this guy told me I wanted to start neutral, and Jeff said, Cary, find some new positions. And so then for the next month, I just went off my back, and I got 3 times better in that 1 month than I'd gotten in the last 2 months. Just really trying to actually discover new things. And wrestlers are always concerned about winning that round.
Right.
We're always concerned about winning in practice. And you have to, like, of course, like, I'm not saying don't be competitive, but you also have to realize all of this is supposed to just be you preparing for a competition. You're supposed to expose yourself as much as you can in practice.
Right.
So if you never try anything new and you never learn anything, you're never going to grow.
Right. Yeah. You can hammer people with your wrestling, but you're not learning jiu-jitsu because you're just hammering people with your wrestling. Right. So it seems like there are 2 main ways that wrestlers go about developing jiu-jitsu. And one, it sounds like it was kind of forced upon you. One is addressing weaknesses and being forced into new spots. And the other is taking that really good wrestling base and adding jiu-jitsu to it. So what do you think there are situations where you should lean one way or the other? Or do you think that, blanket statement, the way that you grow as a jiu-jitsu athlete, the fastest is just sealing up those weaknesses?
That's tough.
Like you could even like assign, like, if you want this goal, like maybe if your goal is to start competing right away, you do it a certain way, It seems like to me, and I'm not a wrestler, right? It seems like to me that if you're looking for the most growth over a time span that is greater than a year or 2, you probably have to seal up weaknesses first.
Yeah. And of course you could probably get by, probably for a good long time, just adding jiu-jitsu to your wrestling. And really, staying out of precarious areas.
Right.
We've seen plenty of them. Like, you probably do well from beginning to mid-range competition.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get somebody who can put you in an uncomfortable position, the only thing your mind's gonna go to is, wow, I wish I'd done this in training.
Yeah. When you get taken off track and into a pure jiu-jitsu situation, it's pretty rough. Like if you don't,
it's scary.
If you have no experience in these places that are not neutral or dominant, yeah, you're in big trouble. Especially if you don't know the guy and you're in a competition. He's just going to be like, well, I just got mauled in neutral and I finally got a spot. I'm going to kill this guy. Right? there's no mercy against wrestlers.
No.
Like people are just willing to snap things on you.
Oh yeah.
And it's and you hope it's a choke, but in no-gi competition it could be your ankle, it could be your knee, right?
Everyone's coming for the knees.
Everyone's coming for the knees, right? So it looks like you built your jiu-jitsu by going weaknesses first.
Yeah.
So how long do you think that phase was for you? Like before you started switching tactics and adding more, because we're trying to make it so that a brand new wrestler walks in and someone's going to ego check them if hopefully, right?
Yeah.
But if you're a wrestler and you're thinking about transitioning into jiu-jitsu, let's try and figure out what's the blueprint to fast track them for growth. Like, how long are you looking to shore up these jiu-jitsu specific things? And when do you start looking at adding to your wrestling? Like, what order do things happen? How, it's an opinion thing, right? So just give me some time frames on what you think is appropriate for the majority of people who are walking in with at least, a few years of high school wrestling, and then maybe make some comments on how it would work for college wrestling if that's different.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that you have to do, and the biggest thing where I got the most growth from, was just instead of trying to dominate every single second, put yourself in bad positions. Basically, like really focusing on getting in a bad position and focusing on getting out of it. And man, I think that was probably my focus for like at least a good portion of the first year. Like once I really started letting go of how I wanted to do it and then just taking like the advice of all my coaches, right. That was by far when I grew the most. And I wrestled in college. And again, obviously, you know, different people, different things, some people, it might be quicker. Some people it might take longer, but it probably took me at least 3/4 of a year, the first year of really just getting comfortable in escapes. And really when I leaned into that, when I leaned into just putting myself in bad positions and focusing on getting out of bad positions, whenever the top guys would come into the gym, you know, Salter, Weidman, all those guys, man, rolling with them, definitely not saying I was whooping. No, nowhere close. But it just made more sense because like immediately in about 5 seconds into the roll, I would be in a bad position.
Right.
But I wouldn't panic. I would just say like, no, you can still work through this. You can still work through this.
Yeah, you have to know what to do. And if you're closed off, if your cup is full, so to speak, mm-hmm. you're not going to build the awareness and skills required to navigate those jiu-jitsu bad spots, or MMA bad spots, which is, you just heard MMA names, right?
Yeah.
So that applies to. Do you think that the fact that we're at an MMA school is a different environment than like just your average jiu-jitsu school? And do you think that the advice is different if you're just at an average jiu-jitsu school?
100% different.
Okay.
100%. And we've had guys from other jiu-jitsu schools come to our gym, and they've told that. And because it's MMA, the focus is a little different. Obviously, jiu-jitsu, it's safe to stay in your guard for. I mean,
sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. You're relatively safe in your guard, and I mean, depending on the rule set, like, I mean, if there's no time in the rule set, you could be in your guard for 30, 40 minutes, and in MMA it's very clear that you can't just hang out in your guard. You have to break posture. You have to have some attempt at a sweep or a get up or if you're not doing any of those, you're probably getting smashed.
Oh yeah, you're getting like in MMA, you're getting hit in the face or whatever, So
I would say there's just more of a healthy urgency to the jiu-jitsu that we're doing there. And also, I think one of the things is jiu-jitsu schools are. I'm not talking crap or anything, but jiu-jitsu schools, like they have pretty relaxed vibe, and they're very much into like you go hard one round, and take a few easy rounds, then go hard around, take a few easy, and perfectly well. It's like, okay, I'll go hard round. Oh, we're done.
Yeah, the room can get pretty intense sometimes.
Yeah,
even in the jiu-jitsu classes.
Yeah.
So I've had some experience in like more traditional jiu-jitsu environments, and I think that the advice is kind of still the same. Because we're at an MMA gym, we're learning wrestled jitsu.
Yeah.
So even the people who are just pure hobbyists that are walking in, they're learning how to navigate wrestling positions.
Yeah.
And if you're at a traditional school, you might not have the same like efficiency in guiding your wrestling situations into a jiu-jitsu situation, right? So is there a specific set of advice that you would give somebody who's, because it's more common to be in like a normal, softer, it's so condescending sounding. It's not. Like, it's just more of like a family vibe. It's relaxed, you know, it's a hobby. There's less urgency. And you're walking in with a lot of urgency because of your wrestling background.
Yeah.
So it seems like the answer is the same, right? You're just, you try to do the same things, not like just like force things. Put yourself in those jiu-jitsu disadvantaged positions, right?
Yeah.
You might not have as much specific advice from your coach on how to integrate your wrestling positions into more jiu-jitsu competency. So do you have anything that can help those people, like, to in that part of things? Obviously, if you're a good wrestler, you work on your weaknesses, you put yourself in bad spots. But how do we navigate building a jiu-jitsu game on top of your normal wrestling game if we don't have specific advice? Because we're lucky, our wrestlers here are lucky because they're at an MMA school and it's kind of going wrestle jitsu.
Yeah.
Right. So what do we have advice for the people who don't have that, you know, that path? Right?
Well, I think first they should buy my instructional. I'm just kidding. I don't have one.
Coming soon in 2 years.
More like 20. But,
20.
That is a good point. And I guess I would probably say to those people, really the same way that you get good at wrestling is, obviously you practice, but I think Chase and Jeff, they say it all the time: time spent multiplied by time focused. If you aren't around, maybe someone like you said who could integrate wrestling into jiu-jitsu, which is like not a slap to anybody else. Like that's a very, very specific thing.
Yeah.
To have really spent time winding them together, finding out, okay, this one's superior to this one's superior to this is how this one links to this. That, like, and the guy we learned from has taken just
it's his life work.
20 years.
It's his life. It's life's work. So
I would say, as much as you can, just really taking advantage of the fact that there's so much out there, just on YouTube, on the internet, and watching the high level guys. And I know that seems like a cop out, but I really think, like, what you watching those, ADCC finals, all those, I really think that's really where you're gonna see the number one, where the blend comes in, because all of them really try to focus on blending their jiu-jitsu with their wrestling.
Yeah. Even the guys who are pure jits.
Yes, absolutely.
They were like, okay, in order to keep up, I just can't.
Yeah. They wish they could.
Yeah. In order to keep up, they have to do enough wrestling and enough leg locks and enough traditional jiu-jitsu, and then blend it all, or else they're gonna fall behind, because everything is just like coming. The pinnacle is like all grappling arts meet. And that's what's happening at the ADCCs. It's happening in an MMA context. Like, you're blending. Like, you're not just one.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so cool to see too, though, in the ADCC finals. But just because you see so much, you see high level wrestling technique, you see high level jiu-jitsu, you see high level judo technique.
Yeah, for sure.
Which really over the last one, you saw quite a bit of it. Guys were really taking more of an upright stance, and just having really low risk, high efficiency moves.
Yeah, the judo foot sweeps are like, oh man, they're banging right now.
I'm nerding out hard on them. I'm always trying to learn.
Yeah.
But I really think, as much as you can, and obviously, like, no, I don't think there's a substitute for practice, but making your practice time count for more by taking all the time that you can, watching as much high-level technique as you can, recording yourself during practice.
If you're able to do that, absolutely, it's a game changer.
For sure.
Yeah. So so you can like find all of these, wrestle jitsu concepts on there. Like B Team is doing it.
Yeah.
Like they have so much cool
stuff. So much fun to
watch. So much cool. And the guys there are freaking hilarious.
Oh, so they just stick around the whole time.
It's great. Yeah. So take advantage of the fact that you dominate all neutral positions and bring yourself to whatever position is the wrestle jitsu position, right? Like you've got a huge advantage in neutral if you're a wrestler. Like you can choose, where the match goes. So bring it there, get reps.
Absolutely.
Like that seems like the easiest way. If you're just somebody at a normal jiu-jitsu school, you'll be able to get reps. If they don't teach wrestling, you're going to be able to wrestle your way into the position you're looking for. You don't have to tell them that's what they're doing. You could also talk to your partners, and they would love to learn a little bit of wrestling stuff from you. Everybody who's just a pure jiu-jitsu guy knows there's this whole wide world of wrestling that they need to integrate if they really want to be the best, jiu-jitsu guy they can be.
If you really want to be good, you want your drill partners to be as good as they possibly can.
Yeah.
You basically want to tell your partners how they can beat you. And help them really, like as much as you can. Tell like, hey, this is how I'm doing this to you, or even like, hey, I haven't been defending a Darce very well. Would you please hunt for that?
Darce,
yeah.
It's using your words can really upgrade the room.
Oh, communication is key to everything.
Yeah, I know, but people avoid it. But yeah, you can definitely find a way to blend things if you're at a traditional school, right? All right, let's see. What else do I have on this?
Sometimes you have to be the blender.
Sometimes you have to be the blender, indeed. All right, so people we already went over how people get stuck, right? Yeah, they stay on their wrestle train. They don't add to it.
And I guess vice versa, like anyone who in a jiu-jitsu gym, like someone coming from a pure jiu-jitsu standpoint, like maybe doesn't want to learn to wrestle up as much. Maybe doesn't want to go over neutral techniques.
I don't resemble that remark at all. Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, wrestling's hard. Like it's
it
like
hard.
there's like it's definitely, it's so funny because jiu-jitsu, there's so much more potential for injuries and stuff like that. But really, people tend to get more injuries while they wrestle, just because like the intensity. There's a lot of velocity. People running at other people, people sprawling their hips on other people. I understand it is hard, but it's just it's so brutally necessary for
sure.
your jiu-jitsu to become what it needs to become.
Yeah, if you end up at black belt and you haven't done any wrestling,
are you a black belt?
Nowadays, I don't know if you are.
Yeah,
like jiu-jitsu is kind of like the meeting of all the grappling arts.
Yeah.
At least nowadays, it didn't always used to be that way, but now everything's so blended.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so before we wrap it up here, I want to address this bonus question that I think is it's for a smaller segment of the audience, the ones that are still younger or competing in wrestling. How, if at all, can you integrate jiu-jitsu into making your wrestling better?
You for sure can. And believe me, I argue. I've coached at a high school. I've coached at a middle school. Again, I don't care about my accolades, and neither does anybody. But I'm a 2-time Division I national qualifier. I'm a 2-time Division I conference champion. I had 95 wins in college.
Yeah, he's a good wrestler.
I am a good wrestler, and man, you'd hear me arguing with these parents, and I'm arguing with someone who has never grappled in their entire, but they're really coming at it like they know what they're talking about. And I was like, Oh, it's quite frustrating. Yeah. You really can't. It is hard, and I do understand the argument of jiu-jitsu. You have to be more comfortable. You're comfortable on your back, which is not that good for wrestling. And I've even seen kids who are more jiu-jitsu kids go out there in a wrestling match, end up pulling guard, end up pinning themselves. I'm not gonna tell you that it's like a straight line.
Yeah, it's not 1-to-1.
Man, if you just take a big step back, like just having an overall understanding of grappling, and I'll get into the specifics, but having an overall understanding of grappling, like, of course it's better. Like it's really just it's kind of silly to say it's not. And I really think if you would, maybe not true across the board, but I think if you would talk to the placers at the national tournament, which just happened last week, right. I really think a lot of them, you'll find more than you would think value jiu-jitsu and have been inside jiu-jitsu schools already. Now
we've got a few of those in our kids program.
We do, and it's been really cool to see them grow. But and even just specific areas, being like a wrestler. If you want to be a good leg rider, jiu-jitsu is one. It's and I've seen our kids that haven't done a day of wrestling, but I just told them, like, hey, put your boots in. Don't lock your hands. Just put your boots in and be a backpack. And man, go out there and just kill people. And they're so physical from the top position, and they always adjust their hips. They're all like, man, it's such I really just kick myself every time I see it, because I was like, why didn't I start doing jiu-jitsu sooner? Yeah. Especially in a position where I struggled being offensive from the top position. And man, our kids are just so offensive, and it's so cool to see.
They're breaking people down. It's pretty cool.
They make kids cry, which makes me really happy.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I'm not a bad person, right?
That one's going into a short. Yeah. So what specific? So you talked about the way that riding and top pressure can be better from jiu-jitsu.
Oh, for sure.
What do you think about people that have jiu-jitsu backgrounds figuring out how to? It seems like there are spots where you can be finding like butterfly and seated guard. Like, what do you think about that stuff? Like, is it really just like how to ride and break down people, or where do you see it like separating the pure wrestlers from where do the blended grapplers separate from the pure wrestlers? Scrambles.
You just have a whole different understanding of. Now, obviously, a big hurdle is wrestling. You're required to wear shoes. In jiu-jitsu, you are not. And anyone who's wrestled somebody without shoes versus wrestled somebody with shoes, say completely different.
Very different.
Completely different. But and just the concept of in jiu-jitsu, just going with the flow, like going with whatever energy you're getting. I really think it's a big advantage in a scramble.
So like a redirection kind of advantage.
Yeah, and also just the concept, jiu-jitsu, you're always wiggling and maneuvering, always using your feet as hands comes up all that. My coach always called it educated toes. I don't know how you can educate your toes, but that was what he called it. I guess having monkey feet, some people call it, really having a more overall understanding of how you can use your entire body when you're grappling with somebody else versus I was more of a straightforward, like hard hand fighting, hard takedowns, do the work on top. I wish I'd had more of an understanding of how to settle in and more to use my own physical attributes in a more efficient way.
Yeah, I imagine that would make a huge difference in the longer 3-round matches.
For sure.
Or against people who are like very like physically equal, being able to be more efficient, it would give you an advantage, right?
I know up at App State right now, there's a true freshman. His name's Carson Floyd, and I go up there and still train sometimes.
Cool.
And he had actually talked to me a little bit about jiu-jitsu, and I had watched his match, and there was just a few things he was doing I was like, man, this guy really seems to resemble jiu-jitsu. And when I came into practice the next day, he was like, hey man, we got to roll sometime. I was like, you do jiu-jitsu? He's like, yeah, I've done a little bit of it. It's really, it just, you could see how sticky he was on top, how good he was at maneuvering his hips. Now obviously he wrestled first, right, and then did jiu-jitsu, but you could still just see the benefit of the crossover.
Yeah. So it sounds like if you're a wrestler, doing at the very least some off-season jiu-jitsu would be pretty beneficial.
I can have fun.
Yeah, and it's fun, right? Cool. All right. Well, do you have any closing remarks on how wrestlers can get better at jits? Or I feel like we pretty much covered it.
We for sure covered a lot. Man. Let go of your own ego. I know like that is a hard one. It's very easy to say, and me and you have been in there and been sitting next to people, and they're like, oh yeah, I can't understand how people don't let go of their ego. I'm like, you literally didn't listen at all during practice. Like, what are you talking about? But really
that wasn't the move. You turned it into a wrestling move. It was a completely different thing, buddy. Yeah.
Really try to take a bigger look at things. I love how Chase always says jiu-jitsu, it's a you problem. Like when you say like this move doesn't work, it's like, no, this move works, you're not doing it. Like always look at what you can do to fix the situation. No, yeah, it's just especially when you start blaming the moves or the instructor, you just sound really soft and nobody likes you.
Yeah, except other people like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they all cling together.
Yeah, so if you're a wrestler, enjoy the advantages you have. Build competency in all of the jiu-jitsu stuff. You're going to be able to find ways to blend it. And, take your time. It's kind of a long game. And if you think about it as a long game, you focus on it as a long game, you're going to be able to build yourself as a total grappler. And, that's kind of what we're looking for here. So, well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Cary. We have to do it again sometime. So this is the end of the 7th episode of the Jiu Jitsu Junction podcast. And thanks for watching.